Welcome back to another episode of The Brothers Trick About. That's right, we're back. It's good to see you. It's good to see me. It's good to see all of us here. We're glad everything is, at least as far as we're concerned, back to normal in the podcast world. Very nice. Coming to you from Austin is me. My name's Matt. And as always, coming to you from planet Houston is my brother Ken. Say hello, Ken.
Live long and prosper.
Here we go. Well, here we are. We're back after a vast two-year hiatus. I guess we could call it that. I got some new pips on my collar, and that's why we stopped. And then this pandemic thing happened, and then both Ken and I were working crazy amount of hours to keep the places that we work at open and running and not falling apart, which we have successfully done. Mostly. And so now, schedules have loosened up and we're able to get back to it and have some fun and watch some Star Trek again, which is very exciting. And fun, that's it for me. Like, that's part of why we're doing this. Yes, we enjoy that you all are listening and watching and having a good time, but, mostly Ken and I are just doing this to, keep up with each other, the old brotherly love and whatnot. So the fact that you're listening is great, but even if no one was listening, we'd still do this just to keep caught up and talking to each other. And in that vein, we have decided that what we want to do is let's go back to the original series. Let's just, have fun, watch it at a slow pace and not have to crank out a new episode every week. Not that we weren't enjoying it, because you can definitely tell by the videos we were, or the audio we were, but, it's nice to be able to take a more leisurely pace, go back, watch some season 2, season 3 of the original series and get back to it. For me, season 3, there's so many episodes of season 3 I haven't seen. So I'm excited to finally get into those. Part of the whole reason I started this whole thing is because season 3 of the original series, season 6 and 7 of Next Generation are all a blur to me. So I'm kind of excited. And I know that season 3 of the original series is so well regarded. I know by then that we've lost, at some point, well, DC Fontana stays through to the end, doesn't she? Or does she finally? She does. But we lose Robert Justman. We lose Gene Roddenberry. Kind of takes a backseat to everything. I think the grind of the 2 previous years is just taking their toll on everybody. And, it's a hard show to have to keep cranking out and make, interesting week after week. Okay. So with that said, what we wanted to do with this episode is just kind of take you through some of the shows that we've been watching over the last couple of, which includes season 2 of Lower Decks and also that first season of Picard, which there's lots to talk about. So we kind of just want to get through them, talk about them, but, again, not have to spend every week trying to scramble and get another podcast up and running, If we were getting paid for this, it'd be a whole different story. But again, we got other jobs, we got other lives we got to take care of. So we're probably going to just go to a bi-weekly schedule from here on out, again, just to make it easy and convenient for both Ken and I to get together, do the show, and enjoy what we are doing. So with that said, I say we just head, we do our thing. We make it happen. Make it so.
Captain's log. Stardate.
It's 5-year mission.
So here we are talking about both season 1 and season 2, I guess, of Lower Decks, because we never even really talked about season 1. So I know that right out the gate that you were a big fan of Lower Decks. It took me a little while to hop onto it. So talk to me about what makes Lower Decks so good.
So it's a cartoon, so it's fun to watch with the grandkids. They enjoy it. It has the right mix of regard for really the Next Generation era, but really the whole Star Trek world, right? So there'll be Kirk references, but of course it takes place in the Next Generation era, just kind of post the TV show. Mm-hmm. So Riker's got his own ship; he's off doing his own stuff. They mentioned Picard on the Enterprise.
Yeah.
So it's kind of probably around like where season 9 or 10 would be, kind of a thing if there was such a thing. Right. We live in a world today in which everything knows that it is part of a franchise. It's aware of it. It doesn't hide it. It's built in. There, a little bit of fourth wall comes down, and so we'll get these kinds of jokes and nods and references, and but it's done really well. It's kind of a love letter to Next Generation and to Star Trek. So it's lots of fun to watch without being, too much. It's its own show. Mm-hmm. It just exists in a world in which other stuff's going on, and it makes sense that the junior officers are going to know the lore and the legends and talk about it.
Because they're teaching that stuff at the academy now,
Right. And, there's always a sense that officers know kind of what's going on. So we would get these kind of throwaway names that didn't mean anything to us.
Right.
About, Williamsburg's over there on the Intrepid and, XYZ. And we're like, I don't know what any of that means. So in the original series, those things would just be whatever. But now, of course, they could say stuff like Tom Paris is over here doing this, or Will Riker's on the Titan, doing that, and we know who those people are. Those aren't just like, oh well, I guess the world's full of other people and things. Instead, we're hep to it all.
Well, it's fun too. I think I heard somebody say about Lower Decks that it's like it's for Star Trek fans by Star Trek fans. You know what I mean? Right. Because it's. The way this guy put it was only Star Trek fans can make fun of Star Trek. You know what I mean? And I don't even think that that's necessarily making fun of it at all. But it's using the. So I don't know if I want to call it fan service, but I know other people might. But you know what I mean? In its self-referential way, it's saying and doing things that you're like, okay, that's really good. Mm-hmm. So, like, for instance, I love that in season 2, like, the Pakleds are like this, are this, like, evil enemy now. It's fun how they've taken, like, this kind of one throwaway, villain that they had one time, and now they've made him, like, and you can see it, too, you can imagine that over the 10 years or whatever, they've collected enough stuff and made enough deals that they're, like, suddenly they're, like, a foe that you could almost be scared of.
Mm-hmm. And you've got little bits like, I think it's the final episode, where they really kind of lean into how Lower Decks, people, they basically just stack containers in storage bays all day long.
Yes.
And, that's the kind of thing that they would show us, kind of as we're going to start the officers here, they're going to have this conversation, and they're going to be supervising some storage, containers going up, and they're going to walk in, and there's going to be these stacked containers. And
yep.
And so,
go ahead.
What they do is they take some little piece like that, and they kind of explore it. Mm-hmm. Right? It's as though someone's been watching these episodes for however many years, and is like, who stacks those containers? How do they get stacked? How does this? And then they do an episode in which that's actually the focus of it.
Yeah, it's like there was an episode in season 1 where they were talking about like the buffering, or whatever it was, where it's like, and she's like, no, this takes too much time. Let's speed this up and blah, blah. And it's only through the exploration of that we kind of realize how important, those little things are and what it means to the people who have to do them, that it's, it's really a sense of pride almost in the ship and how they keep it together and all of that stuff. So that was that's fun. It's funny because too, I think that initially in the first few episodes, which, compared to the last, so like the first 2 or 3 episodes of season 1 compared to the last 2 or 3 episodes of season 1 is a giant leap in storytelling. It's way better. And it's just because they got the groove under their belts, right? They finally started like, okay, we know what the show's supposed to be. We know what it looks like when it works. So let's like when it works. So, they just got better and better and better as the show went along. So the first couple episodes felt almost a little fan servicey for me, because if you remember at the end of like episode 1, she's just like listing all of these different things that have happened, and you're like, are we just talking about old episodes of the Next Generation, or what are we discussing here? So it felt a little fan servicey, which I think kind of like set me back for a little bit. But by the time you get to the end of season 1 and certainly into season 2, all of that stuff, it almost all pays off in some way, you know what I mean? And so something that they set up that was a little idea here suddenly becomes this bigger idea here, which is really great. It's really fun.
Well, it helps that the characters have a history as you go on, so you can begin to refer to previous episodes, or we know how you are as a character,
right?
So they can begin to make those references where they don't have to show everything. They can do a little bit of telling as well.
Yeah.
Right. So you can make references to like the one where they go to the party.
Mm-hmm.
Again, they're dealing with the Doppler.
Yes.
And there's this whole business about how like, well, you're my sidekick. You're like this.
Yeah.
Right? And we know that stuff. So these references are built on things that we've seen in previous episodes rather than just assertions.
I think that's one of the great. Yeah, I think that's one of the great things about the show is that the characters almost all have an arc, right, which is really great. You know what I mean? I was watching the lower decks, the Ready Room with Will Wheaton, and they were talking to the showrunner, and he was saying, what we see in Boimler at the end of season 2 is something that Boimler at the beginning of season 1 would have never have done, as an example. So I thought that was really good. It's funny too, because some of the references that they pull out are like so deep cut that you're like, for instance, when they brought Captain Gomez on at the end of season 2, it was only because I saw a bunch of like stuff on the web that I was even knew who she was.
I had an example of that I thought was hilarious. It's so they bring on Tom Paris, right?
Right.
And Boimler really wants to get his autograph, so he's climbing through the Jeffries tubes. And by the time he gets to the bridge, he is so messed up. His hair's in a mess. His clothes are torn apart. And he gets through the panel, and he falls to and when Tom Paris sees him, he's like, Kazon!
Yep.
And he does look like a Kazon. But of course, it's one word.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to know what went on in Tom Paris's show, Voyager. Yeah. And if you don't look at Boimler and go, yeah, he looks like a Kazon, none of that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it was just one word.
Yeah, it was pretty great. I was also watching in the Ready Room. They were talking about the dolphins, right? Like apparently that was somebody put that into one of the maps of the Enterprise, D, that there was that existed, and then they even said
technical manual.
Yeah. Oh, right. There you go. So it's really funny that again, it's like, well, I guess the Cerritos is gonna have one, so let's go for it. I love it. It's great. It's great. The show is, and the show is ultimately really funny too. I mean, there are just times where you're just like, oh my gosh, that's awesome, And the whole thing really works for me. I really dig it. I haven't even looked at my notes yet. Okay, let me look at my notes. Let's see what else we have to say about this great show. Oh, so here's one of the, and I mentioned this. I don't think I mentioned this on the show, but I mentioned this back when Lower Decks first came out, and the fact that they've made the show canon at first to me was kind of like, are they really making this? It's like, how can this really fit into canon? But I don't know. It just works. I have no real example of it, but stuff like in the credits when there's like there's some monster that's like sucking on one of the nacelles and they're just like at warp and it's just like following through. You're like, yeah, this could have happened to the Enterprise D, but they're not going to show us that episode. You know what I mean? They're going to be like, yeah, we just, zapped it with something and it went away. So it's kind of funny to think that like some of the stuff that we're seeing in the Cerritos, at least initially in the, in some of the early first season, is stuff that we probably wouldn't have seen on Next Generation, even if it would have happened to, the Enterprise D. So I've kind of like put it that way to make it really work in my brain for me. the canon situation.
I think there's also a sense, having been both line workers, and managers. There's a sense of how the organization runs when you're running it, right? This is serious. We're serious people engaged in serious tasks. We're making the best steaks. We have the best hotel rooms, the best, whatever. I work at this place that doesn't have enough pens. How come we run out of our coffee? Why are we running out? Why are we substituting this kind of onion for that kind of onion? And so it's, we can't source the right onions. What's wrong with us? And Lower Decks has that. It's like run out of copy paper. We don't have enough pens. We're sourcing the wrong onions. What's wrong?
Yeah.
Whereas, obviously, when we're watching the Bridge Crew, they're not complaining about stupid stuff like like that.
No, that's true. And,
because of course the captain, unless there's something wrong with the ship.
Right. And they've got to get in. They've got the Bridge Crew has to step in and see what happens, which has been fun in the second season. Having Boimler deal a little bit more with the command crew. Like there was one really good episode was the episode of the red shirts, which, by the way, great name for somebody who's trying to make it to command. The red shirts, because we're used to them, of course, dying all the time. But I love that episode, because you have to imagine that there are people on the ship who are like, what's our fast track into getting into command? What does it mean to be and ultimately, they tell us the very Star Trek thing of like, you just got to be you, just do you, and it'll work. It'll make it happen. I love that. And then I also love, as far as the separation between the Lower Decks and the Bridge Crew, is the I can't remember his name. I'm horrible with names always, but the guy who died, right, the Bajoran, and then all of a sudden, like, he came back, but it's under mysterious circumstances.
Yeah.
I love that. And if you think about it, of course, the show has a history.
And again, you got these lists in which they list off. Yeah. So you get this long list of like how characters have come back.
Right, exactly. Picard at the end of that one, he's like, okay. He came back as an android, and Spock, of course, and so many. It's great. It's also fun too because they start to weave through a bunch of the character stuff. We learn a little bit more about the Orions, that was a really fun episode when they go back to the Orion homeworld and they've got to escape, and they're all being tortured and not tortured. What am I talking about? But they're all being chased by the Orions. That was really fun. And we find out a little bit more about her background, which is fun. I love the Mugatu episode. That was a good time with the Ferengi.
And it was fun that they combined the Ferengi and the Mugatu, right? Because one is Next Generation and one is original series.
Right.
And yet when you put them together, you're not like, wait a minute, this feels weird. It made so much sense.
Yeah. Well, it's so creative how they bring together, or how they make those character moments really work. We got Boimler in that one and his buddy who are who come together and save it all in the end through a diplomatic, very Federation solution, which is great. All because they were playing the diplomacy game at the beginning. But that's great. And again, we see that, like, because of what's happened on the Titan with Riker's ship, it's really changed Boimler. And it will be fun because I'm sure we're going to meet him again. It'll be fun to see what happened to William Boimler and what kind of a character he becomes, having stayed on the Titan.
Yeah, they'll meet him and it'll be like a lieutenant commander.
Right. Exactly. And he'll be like all, command crew guy. It's gonna be great. Yeah, there was something I read recently, and it may be a foolish thing or blah blah blah, but it was the idea that you become part of the like 4 people that you hang around the most.
Right. Yeah.
So, if you think about it, that's what's happened to poor Boimler. He's hanging around with all these other like kooky friends of his. And meanwhile, we got the other Boimler who's hanging out with Will Weicker in his ruddy room, drinking Romulan ale and whatnot. Like, we really get to see what happens with the people you hang around in that case.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the idea of the California class, right? It's this like lower tier ship in the Starfleet, and I was gonna say Navy, and I was like fighting it. It's a lower class ship in Starfleet, and apparently it doesn't get a bunch of the cooler missions that obviously a Titan or an Enterprise could, which is again a fun thing that happens at the end of season 2, where it's like California class shows that it can live up to doing anything that one of the other classes that. But I really like that idea of the Stratus ship.
Yeah, so it's not a ship of the line.
Yeah.
So in going all the way back to Starfleet Battles, which was the tactical Star Trek game, which you'd like have, pages for each ship, and you'd have little blocks of energy that you could deploy to various systems. It had frigates, right, which were these smaller versions of the big ships. And so you would have like, imagine the saucer section, the engineering section, and like instead of that engineering section, there'd be a single nacelle there, right? And then there's no wings with 2 nacelles. It's just saucer section, 1 nacelle below it.
Yeah.
And that was like the frigate version of the Constitution class.
Mm-hmm.
And as we get into the next generation, there'd be these smaller versions of these bigger ships, and they would be the frigates. And so it looks like the California is a frigate version of the Nebula. It's got the same kind of design look to it, but apparently it's smaller and smaller crew, less capacity, not doing the cool stuff.
Right. But still somehow has a dolphin sanctuary on it.
For navigation.
It's really funny too, because the theme song to that show is so similar to the Kirk music from Wrath of Khan that I start to sing the Lower Deck theme song and I end up humming the Star Trek 2 music, da 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 da. It's like it just turns into that, and it's because I have 30 years of da 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 in my head as opposed to 6-8 weeks of the other one. But yeah, definitely similar music in that one for me. Jay Frakes also amazing on the show. He is so good, so funny. The whole 5, 6, 7, 8 thing. He's done it like 3 times, and each time it's like amazing. Let's get out of here at a warp factor of 5, 6, 7, 8. Then there was a late season 2 episode where we get to the lower deck versions of all of like the Klingons and the Vulcans. That was really fun. I really enjoyed that. And then the Borg, of course, ultimately at the end, which went as you would imagine it would go.
Yeah, there's that scene in the one where they're in the car and they've got contraband because that person from the station doesn't like and you can see this old looking Vulcan ship, right? I mean, it looked like this from like really old stuff, right?
Yeah.
And they go through it, and they say Vulcans, and the Vulcans just look at each other. Fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, as it blows by, that was amazing. And then I liked. Well, let's talk about this as we get into this last little section too. But the animation is fantastic in the show. Like some of the ships you look at and you're like, that looks just as good as the other Excelsior class. It looks amazing. So yeah, I really enjoyed the animation. I think the characters look great, and certainly all the ships and the battles and everything that they've done as far as that goes also looks incredible. But in the finale, when they're taking off all the hull plating and everything, that is like superb. It all looks really great. The idea is amazing behind it. I really dug the finale, and then the little cliffhanger that they gave us. Those little buttheads. What's going to happen? Who's she being framed by? Is she being framed by the Packlids? Are they actually that smart, or was it the Klingons? Dun dun dun. Find out next season. Awesome. Well, that about wraps it up for me as far as my notes on Lower Decks. Anything else you want to mention?
Nope, that pretty much covers it.
Excellent. Also, Ransom is being played by Jerry O'Connell.
Yep.
Who, of course, is married to Rebecca Romaine, who's #1 in that upcoming show.
Strange New Worlds.
Strange New Worlds, yes. So I thought that was a really fun connection there.
Yeah.
Speaking of, have you seen the trailer and stuff for that yet?
I don't know.
I guess there was only that teaser trailer a few months ago that came out, but still, it looks great. I love. Anson Mount has said that basically it's going to be they stole our idea is what they did. Mm-hmm. Is that because it's going to be an episodic show. It's going to be, one episode contained, but stuff that happens in one episode affects the characters in the next episode. So we won't have a situation like, The City on the Edge of Forever, where suddenly the love of Kirk's life dies in the next episode. He's like, "Oh, Bones, you're funny."
Yeah, and there probably will be some archy through lines, but they'll tend to be more B story rather than A story.
Right, exactly.
And they'll be handled a little bit, more lightly. It'll feel episodic, even if we're building towards something. There was stuff, to talk about the original series.
Sure.
Where they were inadvertently creating, they thought, we're making episodic television. We reset the show, but they were doing stuff where things had developed and things, where you could refer to previous episodes, which is not how you don't watch Leave It to Beaver, and there's a reference to the time he had the lawnmower job, a season ago. They didn't do that, but we have that in Star Trek where there's development and references to things in the past, and they were creating archy television. By accident, they were stumbling their way into it.
So with that, let's talk about Picard.
Very
archy. Very archy. This is it's only controversial in the fact that like some people really loved it and some people thought it was like, okay. I don't love it, but it was fine. I don't know. I wasn't blown away by it. I thought that it was both fast and slow, if that makes any sense, right? Like there'd be these huge like plot things that would just fly by and, it's like, oh, no time to talk about it. Let's move on, blah, blah, blah. And then it would settle down. And then we'd spend 5-6 minutes sitting around a table talking about, something that happened or what's the next move or blah, 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 which, that's a briefing room scene. We've seen it and talked about it 100 times on the podcast. But I don't know, for some reason, it just, I don't know. It didn't all work for me, I guess, is all I can say about it. For instance, I love the episode where they go undercover and we meet Seven of Nine and, it's hilarious. And Picard, you can tell, Shatner, you can tell Patrick Stewart is having a great time, doing it. Everybody's having a good time with that episode. But ultimately, it's like, why did we even need this episode exactly? I know we were trying to find the guy, but like, I don't know, there's like, he's in the guy's in the show, maybe, 10, 15 minutes. And the whole rest of it is this, really like funny thing that happens. I don't know. It's all, I don't know. I'm conflicted on my feelings about it. That's where I'm at.
I think for that episode, they fell in love with the pitch.
Yeah.
So what if we had a thing where we got to meet a contact and they got to go undercover and Picard puts on an eye patch and we meet Seven of Nine and
Right.
and they're like, oh my God, that's so good, we got to do all that, and then they
Yeah.
do it, even though at some point they're like, how does this all fit in? Oh, never mind, it's gonna be so good.
Right. Everyone's really going to enjoy it. They're
Yeah.
gonna love Picard actually playing a Frenchman with a French accent. All right. Where are
And
we
an eye
at here?
patch.
And an eye patch. Yes, exactly. So what are your general thoughts on the show?
So, my whole theory, and this applies to all franchises,
Okay.
I've said it a lot regarding James Bond, is that any Star Trek is better than no Star Trek.
Always true. Especially Star Trek with people you like and adore.
Right. And so I am, willing to basically see what they're presenting and not have a bunch of expectations and hopes about what I hope it will be, or
right.
And so it turns out that they're making this kind of darker drama about a fish out of water, and so it very clearly takes place in the Star Trek universe. And of course, I prefer, the order of things that I like is setting first, character second,
right,
plot third. And so,
even then for you, the show is amazing.
It is. So I really do enjoy it because, there was a show, and I forget the name of it now. Karen and I were watching it, our sister, and it was a, whodunit mystery, girl drowns in a lake, found in the back of a car kind of a thing. And you're following these police investigating. And it kind of never goes anywhere. And it's just like an investigation with a bunch of dead ends. And I really enjoyed the show because they had this interesting world, and then the characters were interesting. And the fact that there was like no plot, or the plot was like real life, not, goes from here to there in a straight line, but lots of dead ends, lots of, oh, that didn't pan out, or we found out this interesting thing, but I don't know what it has to do with anything else. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And, so this kind of a show in which it's firmly grounded in the world, and then the characters are interesting, that's really all I need.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because as you were saying that, I was thinking, I think that I'm the exact opposite. I think that I am plot, character, setting. Like I kind of don't care about the setting at all. Like any part of a book that like starts going into details about, it's like why it was hard for me to read, anything of Tolkien, because it was just like, you're like 2 pages on like how pretty the trees are, and you're like, I don't care about the trees. What's happening in the trees? Tell me what's happening in the trees. So I guess maybe that's some of it, because again, I do love these characters. I liked all of the characters. What was see me and my horrible name? What's the girl's name? The blonde girl's name?
Coffee?
No.
No.
Right. So her, whose name we can't remember.
But the Daystrom Institute.
Yes, exactly. She sort of gets this pass, right? I mean, like she kills a guy, but then she's like, but I helped Picard, so I'm good now, right? No one's going to come after me, even though I killed a guy. And, it's like, it feels like there should be some consequences, but they're sort of just swept under the rug because...
Well, I think part of it is, had this been an actual Federation crew with the rules and so forth, and the idea that we could, send her away and like another lieutenant would show up to take her place. But they're like, she knows too much, not in the sense of like, therefore we gotta kill her. Yeah. But in the sense that like, we couldn't replace her.
Yeah.
Right. We need a computer expert. We need an artificial intelligence expert. We need someone who's worked on data for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, she's done bad things, but who in this room hasn't? Right? Who in this room isn't currently like committing treason? I don't feel like I'm particularly honorable here.
Yeah.
I mean, there goes my pension, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's how it works out.
I guess that's fair. I will accept your explanation. So we got plenty of Romulans in this. I'm sure you loved every minute of that.
You know, Romulans are always tricky, right?
Right.
Because Romulans are a thing where I do have a lot of, we'll call it headcanon or fanon, or and then somebody else comes along and does something a little different with it. And there's always an adjustment period in which you go, okay, so this is what they're doing. All right, fine. As opposed to, well, here's where I think they ought to be now. Yeah. Or here's what I think they ought to focus on. Or here's what they... So unlike my more normal, just show me what you got and I'll just, take it for what it is. I do have more interest in the Romulans, so there's always a little more opportunity for disappointment.
Well, I think in this one they really expand the idea, right? Of what it's no longer just a monoculture like Star Trek tends to do. We have obviously we've always had the Tal Shiar, and then we have that new super secret tech that a group that is anti-tech or whatever, and then we also have the two who follow Picard, the former Tal Shiar, who are these like caring, very nice people who are all about protecting their boss, basically, the guy who saved them or whatever. So it's really, I think it's interesting. I like the way they expand it. We even have like privateers basically aboard the Borg ship who are stealing all that tech and selling it on the open market. So I like it. I like the way that they took, and especially now that they don't even have a homeworld anymore, I think it would be even harder for them to be like a centralized unit,
Yeah.
So yeah. Hello. But yeah, I dug what they did with Romulans in this one.
Yeah, ultimately it turns out to be really cool. And they give you stuff like that Starfleet intelligence officer who turns out to really be Tal Shiar. And of course that was kind of classic Romulan stuff there. And then there's other stuff like lots of sword play and this kind of stuff. Yeah, I dig that. And then then there's just things going in unexpected directions where you're like, I'm gonna have to take a minute to take this in.
Yeah. Well, of course, the return of Riker and Deanna was amazing. That whole episode was really great. I like that they spent some time with him too. It wasn't just like we get one scene and then we move on. And then of course his return at the end of the end of the show was, stand up and throw your fists in the air because you're like, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, so what they did was really great because they knew that we would want to catch up.
Right.
Right. Where are the Rikers? What are they doing? What's happened between here and there? And they give us some of that, right?
Yeah.
Obviously they only have a certain amount of time, so they can't make the Rikers show as much as I think most
maybe they can now.
Yeah.
Be him cooking pizza every episode.
Yeah, every episode comes with a pizza recipe.
I was just thinking of like he's got his own pizza place. That's every episode. It's like Cheers, but at a pizza place.
Well,
Geordi shows up for an episode.
What they would do is, now that we live in a world of like home delivery and apps and everything, is you could subscribe and basically get Riker's Pizza every week. So there'd be an episode, they'd make a pizza, and then if you wanted to, you could get the pizza sent to your house.
Exactly.
And then you could rewatch the scenes where he makes it, make the pizza yourself.
I thought you were gonna say that there was like a delivery service, and now like that's all the Titan is now. They've turned the Titan into a pizza delivery service.
Well, there's no reason that the car that pulls up couldn't say USS Titan on it.
Get all the pizza you want anywhere in the galaxy. From Bill's place. Interesting. So we got a lot in this show themes about like legacy. I feel like that was a big one, especially early on. Not only his legacy, but Data's legacy of the kids and all of that. I thought that was really interesting. Obviously, in typical Picard fashion, there was a lot of like, let's stand up for what is right. There was a lot of that. It was good stuff. I just don't feel like it was implemented perfectly.
Well, I think they were breaking some new ground. Obviously, they hadn't made lots of these shows.
Yeah.
And so they kind of had to figure out how to make so I was joking at the beginning that this is very archy, but in fact, it's just one big story.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it has episodes is kind of an artifact of how we get to it.
Yeah.
Rather than just making a big 10-hour long thing to watch. And they haven't made this kind of show for Star Trek, so I think there was a certain learning curve.
Also in the final episode, that like true goodbye to Data, that was really good. It was I don't know, did everything it needed to do. It not only was like us saying goodbye to Data, but it also kind of felt like it was Brent Spiner finally saying goodbye to his character and giving it a final farewell. I dug all that.
Well, that is something that they have done before. So we get that with Spock.
Mm-hmm.
And then we kind of get it with Kirk in Generations. We get it with Tasha Yar in season 1. And so, there are things that work and things that don't work. And, but this is kind of like at least a 4th iteration of it.
Yeah.
And so they have a good sense of how to do it well, rather than, because I think Tasha Yar is the least satisfying. Kirk is probably the second least satisfying. Although, since Kirk looms large in the franchise, and Tasha Yar was a character that we had seen for half a season.
Yeah.
I think it's more disappointing, even though it's not necessarily the worst handled death. And then I think they did a good job with Spock.
Yep.
And I had a 4th one, didn't I? Or no, I guess Data's the 4th one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, they get to work on what works and what doesn't work, and it's nice.
Well, double call back to Tasha Yar. Obviously, we saw the Skin of Evil again when they pranked him at the end of that episode. That was really funny. Ooh, what are you going to do, kill us? That was amazing. And then she also, too, as you pointed out, she died and then also returned. So, yeah, they really do a lot of it. It's amazing. That's pretty much all I've got in my notes. Anything you got in your notes or anything else you want to say about Picard?
No, I think that's a good kind of summary.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm excited for the next season. I'm especially excited that they're going to do some Q stuff. That'll be fun. I've always liked John Delancey as Q. So that'll be great. It'll also be fun to see because I guess apparently Guinan's in this series as well, series 2. So we'll have to see how that all works out. That will be fun.
You remember even before when it was still announced that they were going to do this thing, and he announces it at Comic-Con or whatever, and then he's on The View, and there's the whole thing where he's like, come on the show, and she's like, I'd love to, and of course then it's just like 2 actors who have such enormous they can just say stuff.
Yeah, and it'll happen.
Yeah.
Well, I have a feeling he probably talked to somebody before he offered it to her, but
I think at that point they're just like, we're going to make this show.
Yeah.
Nothing's been written. Other than
exactly. Yeah.
There's a treatment, but we'd love to, include you somehow. And she's like, yeah, I'd love to do it. And at that point, you tell the writers, let's think about how to do this the right way. And they save it for season 2, which totally makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, that'll be fun. I can't wait for that. I can't wait for, as I said, Strange New Worlds. That's going to be really good. That's coming up. And then, we keep hearing rumblings about some kind of movie, some coming out sometime. We don't know. So there you go. That's kind of a wrap up of what's happened in Star Trek land over the last 2 years since we've done a show. So that's kind of fun. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back.
Did you have any thoughts on Bill Shatner going to space?
Hey, good for him. I'm excited that he got to go, even at 90. That's impressive.
It was cool.
The memes that have come out of it have been fantastic as well. I've enjoyed a lot of those. I saw one where he's looking out the window and he sees he sees like TIE fighters flying around out there. Like that.
I saw that one.
There's also a great one that I have. I'll post it for the video folks on YouTube right now. But there's a great picture where you see him as Kirk, like looking out the window. Remember, there's that one episode where they're up in that strange overlooking the docking bay or whatever. And then cut to 50 years later, there's William Shatner actually looking out a window into space. So that was really cool. I really like that one.
There was one where there's the guy like face pressed up against the glass, and Shatner's like, "I was hoping this would be more Star Trek and less Twilight Zone."
Nice. I have seen one too where it's that shot from that show, from that Twilight Zone episode where he's pointing out the window looking at the stewardess, and in the window it's old Shatner looking back at it. All right. Well, anyway, so just so I'll finish up our what we're going to be doing for the next now and for a while. We're going to finish up season 2. We've only got like 4 or 5 episodes left, believe it or not. Then we are going to, we'll do something in between 2 and 3, just because we always do, to kind of like break it up a little bit, talk about something else. And then we might even do Discovery season 3, since we haven't hit on that yet. And then, not all the episodes, we'll just talk in one episode about season 3, like this. Then we'll do season 3. And then after season 3, I think we've decided we are going to watch all the movies, motion picture to Star Trek 6, just in order of those without getting into Next Generation in the meantime. Then, once we get done with 6, we'll decide if we're going to move on and go to Next Generation. Because I've said this before, but that season 1's a little rough to get through. But we'll see. It'll be fun. We'll enjoy it.
Something else to think about is the animated series.
Ooh, there are a couple of good episodes in the animated series. There's one with Spock and the pet. That one's a really good one. And plays into Discovery, if you remember. Yeah, we could think about the animated series. That could be good. And they're shorter, too, so that also makes it easier to come. We could do like 2 episodes in one show. Well, anyway, that's the plan for now. If we add the animated series, we'll definitely let you know when the time comes. But that's it for this week. Join us next. Oh, we have some backlogged episodes, 2 or 3 that we recorded back in the day. Which of course starts next week with Obsession, which we talked about. If you remember, Obsession is the one. I don't remember which one Obsession is at all. But you'll get to hear about it next week, and that's going to be really exciting for you. I know it. So come on back. In 2 weeks. I guess it's not even next week. It's in 2 weeks now. Gosh, darn it. I think Wednesdays are going to be my release day, so just know that. They'll be coming out every 2 weeks on Wednesday. So whenever this one came out, look 2 weeks forward from that, and that's when the next one will come out. Okay, there we go. I think that's everything. Double checking my notes. Okay, well, that's it. As always, my name's Matt, coming to you from Austin, and coming from Houston is my brother Ken. Say goodbye, Ken.
Live long and prosper.
There we go. That one will work. And we will see you all next week. In 2 weeks. Gosh.